What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Raw review. This one is from July 24th, 1995. This is the Raw after the In Your House pay-per-view. Pretty decent show in my opinion. Had some good matches at the start of the show, but it kind of fell off for me. The 1-2-3 Kid and the Roadie surprised me with a good match. And the best match of the show was Shawn Michaels versus Jeff Jarrett by far. Shawn ended up winning to become the Intercontinental Champion once again. Shawn Michaels comes out for the first match of the show. He's taking on the Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey, Jim Cornette, and Pritchard in his corner as well. They do have a new Raw Stage 2, no longer the neon entranceway. They replaced it with the big Raw letters with the little Titantron. A couple of good opening sequences by Shawn before Jimmy takes control and slows the pace down. The Gigolo misses a move from the top rope. Shawn kips up and gets momentum back in his favor. Shawn climbs and hits the elbow drop for a near fall. He tunes up the kick for some chin music, but hits Pritchard on the apron. A little later, he nails Jimmy with the kick too to pick up the win. He struts around after the victory and takes his trunks off, then teases taking his pants off, but looks over to Vince on commentary and thinks twice about it and doesn't go all the way, kinda shaking his head because McMahon wouldn't approve of it. But let's be honest here, Vince would love to see Shawn strip down for him. They throw back to when Shawn won the title at the pay-per-view. This led to a fallout that we didn't see between Roadie and Jeff Jarrett, and Vince suggests that maybe Jeff wasn't the one singing. And this was because Jeff made his live performance debut at In Your House. They put some good work into that whole production, I'm gonna say, but anyways, they're planting the seed for the rift between the Roadie and Jeff Jarrett after Jeff lost the belt. And it was due to the Roadie pulling Jeff's leg on accident in the match, which led him to lose the belt. So there's a little bit of reasoning to why they're arguing. Add to the fact that Jarrett lost the belt, so it looks like these two are going to be going their separate ways. Moving on, we get a recap of the feud between Hakushi and Bret Hart, because we are getting a rematch between the two of them later on in this show. Next up, the Smoky Guns taking on some jobbers. They pick up the win after a tag team maneuver. With this win, they are now contenders for the tag belts. That's all you need in this division, just one win. After that match, Vince McMahon with the guy who's been shilling their products, I didn't get his name. He's promoting Jeff Jarrett's shirt and tape cassette. This segment went from awful to hilarious in a couple of seconds. Vince completely shits on this guy, and I can defend him. Take a listen to how awkward this back and forth was.
You also get the brand new and maybe only time available tape. This is it, baby. With my baby tonight. Here it is.
Are you going to be with your baby tonight?
My baby's in New Jersey.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's a reversible shirt. Too bad you don't have a reversible face, Dadinsky.
Very nice, King. 1-800-1091, guys. Got the tape.
All right, there you have it from Barry Dadinsky. Ain't he great, folks? I'm not too sure about that, but with your baby tonight, pretty great scene.
At this point, I can see Vince continuing to put this guy on camera just to make fun of him, which is really shitty on Vince's part. Then, when he's had his fun, he's probably going to let him go, because I didn't remember ever seeing this guy until I started doing these reviews. Have no recollection of this guy, so I doubt that he makes it into 1996. But we'll see what happens. And now, also, if you know what a tape cassette is, good for you. Also, really quick, we get our first tease at Goldust. They show his name and Howard Finkel makes the introduction in the vignette, so we got that to look forward to, I guess. Dustin Rhodes was in WCW for a little bit. I think the last thing that I saw of him was actually that one match that's really infamous in WCW when they were on that semi-truck fighting. I think that was like one of his last matches on one of the pay-per-views. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been on like Spring Stampede or something like that. But yeah, Dustin Rhodes was in WCW for the last couple of years, teaming up with his father. Next up, we have Wayland Mercy getting the win over a jobber. He is now 2-0 in Raw since making his debut. Sure, they've been jobber matches, but still, 2 wins. They do a In Your House recap, the main event being Psycho Sid versus Diesel. This match wasn't anything to go back for. Typical lumberjack match if you've ever seen one. And it ended with a big boot to Sid. You've had this building up because of a powerbomb. Was Diesel not able to get Big Sid up? Because in the In Your House report, we are moving from Sid and Diesel, and the new number one contender is King Mabel. So they're not going to pay off the powerbomb angle here with Diesel getting Sid up and, nailing him with that move. I guess not. I guess we'll never see it. But yeah, King Mabel is now the number one contender for the WWF Championship after obviously winning the King of the Ring. So there's a reasoning for it. He didn't just get it out of nowhere. And then here we go. A rematch that I've actually been looking forward to. Bret Hart versus Hakushi. Hakushi comes out and pulls out the severed head again from his sack. Big pause on that. I don't think we've seen Bret since the last In Your House, which was like a month ago, which, saying that again, doesn't actually feel like a long time, but it feels like he's been gone forever. I think it has to do with how close the pay-per-views are now. Before, we didn't need to see Bret because pay-per-views were months apart, but now since the pay-per-views are so close, it's weird not seeing a top star appear on TV for more than like 2 weeks, especially if they're not injured and they have a program with someone. Getting into this match, Hakushi gets the jump on Bret before the match, starts with the help of his manager. Bret reverses a splash off the ropes and takes control back. Bret gets sent into the ring post, followed by a baseball slide into Bret's midsection, but still in between the post and Hakushi, if you can picture that. Hopefully I got a clip for you. Hakushi reverses a backbreaker into a backbreaker of his own, and then sends Bret crashing into the turnbuckle. He climbs the ropes and it looks like he hit a splash or a flying headbutt, one of the two. Later on, Hakushi with an impressive dive to the outside on Bret, but somehow Bret gets up first and does a springboard dive of his own onto Hakushi and his manager, Shinja I think they call him. Bret tries to stay in control, but the manager comes in, and so Bret gets distracted. He moves out of the way from a splash from Hakushi and then delivers a superplex. He follows that up with a sharpshooter, and Hakushi submits. Shinja comes in after the match but gets a pile driver for his troubles. Vince says that this could be the last time we see Shinja in the WWF after that pile driver, so I guess this is how they wrote him off. Funny how I didn't learn his name until right now, and it looks like he's gonna be gone. So basically, learned something for absolutely no reason. Reminds me of grades 7 through 12. You might be saying 7 through 12. Where's K through 6? Well, at least from kindergarten to like 6th grade, they still taught us like the basics, like reading and math, which we actually use that from time to time, but most of the stuff in middle school and high school really useless. We didn't need any of that. But, at least from my experience. Then, afterwards, Jean Lafitte came out and took the sack that Bret's head was in and walked to the back with it. Not sure what's going on with that because neither Bret or Hakushi paid any attention to this. Jean just came out, took the bag, left, and nobody really like looked at him or tried to chase after him. Speaking of school, this was a great transition and completely unintentional. We get our first look at Dean Douglas in order to keep myself sane and not overdo these reviews, because I wanted to do kind of like a ECW, WCW recap along with the Raw reviews. Even like back in like 1994, I wanted to do this, just to kind of go over with what was going on with other promotions at the time. I move, I might do that down the line, but I think what I will do instead, when a guy comes over from ECW or WCW, I can kind of do like a little quick backstory to where they were, like what promotion they were at, and like what kind of storylines they were doing or a match that they had, kind of like I did with Dustin Rhodes earlier. Not kind of go through their whole history, but just kind of recap a little bit of what their last couple of days were in that promotion. So yeah, Dean Douglas, he was the ECW champion. He was basically their guy from August of 1994 until he left, and he kind of had like a weird timing in ECW because when he won the belt, he beat a guy named Too Cold Scorpio. He beat him to become the ECW champion, which was the Extreme Championship Wrestling belt. It wasn't the Eastern Championship Wrestling anymore. That's when they turned Extreme or whatever it was. And he was part of a group that was called the Triple Threat with Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko. Benoit and Malenko were tag team champions at the same time that Dean Douglas was the ECW champion. When he lost the belt, he lost it to the Sandman, and then they did this whole weird thing where the Sandman was managed by women. They did this whole thing where she turned on the Sandman to go with Dean Douglas, and something that I thought they weren't doing with women was like making her a sexual object for who she managed, because when she was with the Sandman, it kind of looked like that was like the thing that they were going for, but it was strictly business. But then when she turned on the Sandman to go with Dean Douglas, she ended up making out with him, and then she still turned on Dean Douglas to go back with the Sandman, which didn't make any sense. So that whole thing was kind of all over the place. And then it ended with Dean Douglas cutting a promo that he was leaving, but then he still made like a couple of appearances afterwards. I don't understand it. I thought that when he cut that promo and he left through the crowd, that was it. But then he still made a couple of appearances on ECW. But Shane Douglas coming into the WWF as Dean Douglas, so we'll see what they do there. Obviously, I went a little bit more in depth on Shane Douglas, but that was because he was the main guy, unlike Dustin Rhodes, who was, just a mid-carder doing some random stuff. Shane Douglas was their guy, technically, for about a year. But getting back to the WWF Monday Night Raw show, the ending of the show, we get some words from Shawn Michaels. Jerry Lawler tells him that just because he's won the title 3 times, that doesn't mean that he's a good champion. Just like him married multiple times doesn't make him a great husband. I didn't come up with that myself. If you saw the episode, you would know that Jerry Lawler actually said that about Larry King, but it works for Jerry here too. So, I don't know, Shawn challenges him to fight him, but the segment ends and the show ends, so we might be getting that match in a couple weeks or something. So, this show will get a good grade. Needed another moment or two to get it to a great grade, but it had 2 matches that were pretty good for Monday Night Raw standards. Shawn versus Jimmy Del Rey and Bret versus Hakushi. If you haven't watched it, go check it out for whatever reason if you haven't watched it but you're listening to this review. But yeah, with all that being said, I am out.